Hey there, Brawlers, Deathblow here. It's Friday, and on this channel, that means maybe sometimes there's a tier list video. Well, today is one of those times. Listen, it's no surprise, but my hero tier list video has been by far the most popular on the channel, and it still gains views consistently. I've played a lot of games since then, and I've now played every single hero. More importantly, I've been tracking my games for quite some time. I want to give a quick shout out to Mootropic, who created this stats sheet. There's a link in the description below that you can use to get a blank copy of this spreadsheet, and you can use it to track your own games going forward. My tier list is not going to be following my win rates here exactly. That would overly emphasize my personal performances a bit too much, and ignore the small sample sizes that I have. This may look like a lot of games, but for every single hero, it's far too small of a sample size to get an accurate picture, especially when compared to aggregate data from a large number of players. On top of that, there's heroes that I know I play poorly, even if I don't know why, but I still believe the hero is very strong. Another reminder is that this is a tier list for which heroes you should pick at the start of the game. I will give a shout out to the potential It Was All a Dream options, but that will not be reflected in their placement on this list. So let's get things started, and we're going to begin with Celestial Tiger. This is a hero with an extremely powerful but somewhat inconsistent ability. I've done videos highlighting how great it works with treasures like Ancient Sarcophagus, Merlin's Hat, or Wild Growth. The games where you hit one of these are incredible. You're going to be around for the top 2 or the top 3, and you're going to have a blast the entire time. But there's also those games where you just don't see any early treasures, or you don't see the ones that are overly impactful with the ability. You can almost always scrape some value out of it, but it's fairly often that it doesn't have too much impact on the game. This inconsistency is why I put Celestial Tiger in the B tier, same as last time. Haron is next, and there's no inconsistency problems here. You're going to lose a character in combat just about every round, and he's going to pump their stats for you, simple as that. He makes you incrementally better over the course of the game, but it is a subtle improvement, and not overly impactful in my experience. At least not since Doubly moved to level 3. There is some skill in doing what you can to control who will be buffed, and I like the hero a decent amount. I just don't think he's that powerful, and my sample size of results, while small, do back it up with 1 crown on 7 games and an average placement of 5th. I'm going to bump him up 1 tier to B. Ivela is next, and she's still the queen of the mid-game. I tend to commit a little too hard to animals when I play her, trying to allow myself to be carried by her ability even into the late game, at least until I find a bear stain. I need to learn to freely transition with her, instead of being stubborn. I've recorded 18 games with this hero and never once taken first place somehow. Even still, 11 of those games were a top 4 finish. If I'm not level 6 and I'm facing against an Ivela on any other hero, I pretty much just assume that I've lost the round. My thoughts here are pretty much the same as last time. This is an S tier hero, and once I learn to let go of animals, when appropriate in the late game, I think I can squeeze even more value from her. When I did my first tier list, I didn't even own the Cursed King, and I didn't like the idea of him. I've since purchased and played him a little bit, and while I'm still not a fan, I get it. I've had games where it felt like I was playing Pan's Shadow. I exploded in the early game with a wide board and carried that into the mid and late game. The paid life was not really a major concern like I thought it would be, but for the most part, I still favor heroes that directly affect my unit's stats on the board. It's a small window where Cursed King enables you to have that wider board, and I would prefer a hero that provides me with a highly impactful ability for longer. He's definitely become a viable pick for me, and I didn't view him as that last time, but I've got to put him at the top of C tier for now. Gepetto is a hero that can have a big impact, but early in the game, the opportunities are kind of few and far between. You do have Black Cat, and then Tweedledum, Princess Peep, and Trojan Donkey. They all work with him, but they're not always the easiest to find or fit with the squad that you're building. Late in the game, 3 Big Pigs and Pumpkin King also make good use of the ability, despite it being a little less effective by level 6. All that said, I don't really think the +2/+2 to your spawned creatures is enough to elevate him beyond the middle of the pack. For me, he slots in right behind Cursed King. Grandmother is one of the heroes that doesn't help you win combat at all until very late in the game, but it does give you some extra life to help you get to level 6, as well as a significant power boost when you get there. In a pinch, I'll pick her, but I vastly prefer to swap to her with It Was All a Dream in the late game for a free 10 health as well as the +3/+3 to my entire board. I've got to put her in the E tier. Gwen has become a personal favorite of mine. You can use your free knighthood on turn 1 for a wizard's companion or a happy little tree, and you're going to be better off on board than anybody else for quite some time. If you don't hit those early, look for Adventurer or possibly a Fairy Godmother, and you'll find yourself far ahead of the lobby all the way into the late game. But be sure to do your best to use it relatively early. If you don't, you're going to be behind and low on life before you even reach level 6. With 10 recorded games, 3 crowns, and 8 top 4s, she's easily an A-tier hero for me at the moment. Horde Dragon is a very interesting hero. Some people will swear by it, and some people hate it. I'm a bit in the middle. It feels inconsistent since it does nothing for me if I'm low rolling and struggling to find triples, but it also makes things like tier 7 treasures much easier to find, especially when coupled with a treasure map. I put it right in the middle, in C tier, right behind Cursed King. Jack's Giant is a very difficult hero to beat in the early game, so I view him more as a head start. His ability loses effectiveness earlier than every other hero in his tier, so look to cast and It Was All a Dream at some point, but I believe he's very efficient at reaching the top 4. Something I've been able to do in 6 of the 9 times that I've picked him. I've got him just ahead of Karen in the B tier, but I could see this moving down over time. Krampus is a pretty decent hero, honestly. A bit boring, but as part of the initial cast of free heroes, you're going to play him a significant amount. However, that minor stat boost he provides is quickly outclassed by a variety of other hero abilities. Now that I own them all, I rarely pick him, and honestly, it's a bit of a disadvantage to feel forced into an evil composition. I've played it just once on my stat sheet, good for a top 4, but I've got him in the D tier, in case you didn't pick up on that. Loki's up next, and while there can certainly be the occasional low roll games, hitting far too many forbidden fruits, generally speaking, the early game spells are super powerful, allowing you to build a wide board early. In late game, the spells become even more powerful. Admittedly, it's a little less potent late, as you're bound to hit a few spells that just don't matter at all. But if you count up how many rounds you don't buy any spells in a single game on the other heroes, you'll realize that you're going to get a ton of value from Loki throughout the entirety of the game. Squarely A tier, and I'm very tempted to put him in S. He has my highest average placement at 2.29, though the 7-game sample size makes me question going any higher than A. Mad Catter is the ranking that I am the least confident in. I play it pretty poorly, to be honest. I've really worked to train myself not to roll so aggressively in the early game, and you get rewarded for it on this hero. So I'm fairly confident that I'm leaving a good amount of value on the table when I play him. So I've got it right behind Celestial Tiger in C tier for now, but I plan to play it a lot on my alt account until I get the hang of it, and hopefully it'll go up over time. Now it's time for the Mask. He can be inconsistent for sure, but the high rolls on this hero are just insane. If you use your It Was All a Dreams, you can pick Skip to gain 3 free experience without losing a turn, or Grandmother to gain 10 life plus the level 6 effect. And if you whiff on a valuable early game hero, you can just fire off your second copy right away and look again. Just make sure that you're aware of what the ideal options are when you cast it. Since there can't be duplicate heroes if somebody's already on Skip, just grab kind of a B or C tier hero and wait until the late game for your second swap and try to grab a Morgan or a Zelhua. I've got him at the back of B tier. Merlin actually has a surprisingly low average placement for me, but I'm pretty sure that's my fault. I tried too hard to force the mage comp on Merlin because of how fun and powerful it is when you get the crystal ball and Merlin's hat online. But everything about the hero screams value, and if I could be a bit more disciplined, I think my placement number could go up significantly. Maybe I'll drop it down if I don't see better results by the next iteration of this list, but for the time being, he stays in the A tier, but he's going to go right below Loki. Mordred's up next, and while I initially thought the ability was pretty decent and would prove pretty useful almost immediately after you filled up your board, something happened to me that made me change my mind a bit. I played the hero. It takes a pretty niche scenario for the ability to swing combat into your favor. I've done okay swapping to it late in the game when the ability is at its best, but it's no more than the best of 4 bad choices in that scenario too. I have him at the bottom of E tier. Morgan Le Fay was just buffed, but unfortunately, as far as heroes to pick at the beginning of the round, she remains among the very worst. That said, it is the most powerful target to swap to with It Was All a Dream late in the game, giving you 1, maybe 2 tier 6 treasures. But you just can't ever pick it because it doesn't help you at all until you're over halfway dead, and you are going to drop down below 20 early because it doesn't help you. I do hope they stop trying to buff her and make her a viable selection. I'm kind of a big fan of these, quote, bad heroes all being great swap targets. Listen, there's always going to be bad heroes in the game, that's how it works. But this gives those bad heroes a valuable role and a place in the game, which I love. F tier. Mrs. Claus gets basically the same analysis and placement as Krampus. The effect gets outclassed by most heroes very quickly, but it does go 1 spot above her evil holiday-themed counterpart, simply because I would rather be playing a good comp than an evil one in the mid-game in this meta. Muerte is another one of those good swap target but bad initial selection heroes. It's going in F tier, but it's the best F tier hero in my opinion. Very early at least, you can get good value from it if you're able to find one of the very few early game characters with last breath, but it doesn't really do much else until you get level 6 and buy a good boy. Pan's Shadow surprised me when I checked his stats. In 8 games, I have 7 top 4s, 2 crowns, and an average placement of 2.75. Even after the nerf, he still feels very efficient early game, gaining the wide board advantage easily, and clearly performing pretty well into the mid and late games. Being efficient with your gold is not going to go out of style anytime soon. And while the stats might be better than some of the heroes above him on this list, I do often completely abandon the ability entirely to transition to a good boy comp, or I'll eagerly swap heroes when presented with the opportunity. So what I think these stats are telling me is that this philosophy is the right one to have on this hero. Keeping him in B for now, but I might move him up in the future. As you learned just 2 days ago, I started a video series to try and hunt the elusive Peter Pant's first place finish. So clearly this hero's not going to rank too highly. He is, however, fairly efficient at grinding out top 4 finishes, so he won't be in the F tier. At the higher ranks, however, you really need to get to that top 2 or top 3 to gain any rating, so he's going to go in the E tier for me, right above Mordred. But if you're in the lower ranks and comfortable playing him, go for it, and take the top 4 finish. Hyde Piper moved more than any other hero on my tier list this time around. Initially, he felt like an efficient hero that helped you find treasures throughout the game, but what I didn't know was that I was just high rolling with him early in my testing. The magic disappeared, and I've struggled to top 4 with him of late. He's going down to the back end of C tier, from A on my previous list. Potion Master has an incredibly powerful ability. A permanent +2/+2 is better than Merlin, and the fact that you choose where it goes is kind of ridiculous. But the problem is, there aren't a ton of targeted spells in the game, and you'll go through large stretches of some of your games not finding any and getting no value. When that happens early, it can be very difficult to recover and get the W. This may be an overreaction, but I'm putting him at the bottom of D tier, in large part because of how frustrating those low roll games can be. I look at Princess Belle as a slightly better version of Mrs. Claus and Krampus. There's far fewer monsters than there are good or evil characters, but making them all good and +2/+2 is a unique bonus that enables you to run some interesting compositions. Think about adding Grumblegore into your good boy composition, let alone something like Jormungand and Baba Yaga, all of which is something Princess Belle allows. Pup the Magic Dragon is incredibly powerful in the early game, but it tends to fall off late, so look to abandon your support units by the end, and because of that, I put this hero at the bottom of B tier. I will say my stats show I might be a little low on it. Only 7 games, but 2 crowns and 5 top 4s is pretty good. Gives me an average placement of 2.86. I could see Pup climbing a little more in the next video. Sad Dracula remains my favorite hero in the game. He's fun and powerful, enabling unique compositions that other heroes can't possibly execute. But the first few turns are incredibly important. If you miss out on the early slay triggers, the game can get away from you, and you can find a few very low placements, though it's very rare. In my 18 games, I've top 4'd 13 of them with an average placement of 3.78. That's good enough to remain in the A tier. Sir Galahad is a hero that I don't really play too often, mostly because I don't tend to enjoy the treasure-dependent heroes as much as most because of how frustrating it is for me when I struggle to find the treasures. But if you're a Dwarves player, go crazy with Sir Galahad. He works phenomenally well with Dwarven Forge and can really pump out a lot of value, which is magnified by doublies and triplies. I have him right in front of Hyde Piper in the C tier. Skip the Time Skipper is kind of like Sad Dracula in that he's one of those high-ranked heroes that is certainly possible of low-rolling and just losing in spectacular fashion. But the advantage of being a level ahead is massive. And as you get better at identifying the correct early game characters that you should be looking to purchase specifically on this hero, the low rolls will become less frequent. He slots in at A tier right in front of Gwen. Snow Angel is kind of the opposite for me of Dracula and Skip. It's a low-ranked hero with very high roll potential. Getting free minions is no joke, and early when you're just trying to build as wide as you can, it can be a massive advantage. But by the late game, getting a random good character is usually just an extra gold. But sometimes it's a third copy of a character you're looking for and the value spikes off the charts, but it happens far too infrequently to pull her out of the D tier. I count the Fates as a treasure-dependent hero, since you don't get any value until you upgrade a character, even though it doesn't really technically care about the treasures themselves. And it's not quite powerful enough of an ability to really flip the tides into your favor when you get there. Unless you're just high-rolling and upgrading everything with ease, she's in the E tier, right above Peter Pants. I still have Trophy Hunter as my worst hero. That said, it is among the most fun to try to make work, especially if you're hunting a Puff Puff win. And it is a great swap choice, unlocking some of the highest roll compositions that I have ever seen, thanks to Good Boy and Magic Sword. Unfortunately, it's not too valuable until after you have both Good Boy and Magic Sword, so just never pick it at the start. And on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, we get to Wonder Waddle, which is still the best hero in the entire game. Listen, treasures win games, and Wonder Waddle always has them. If you add in the potential for incredibly early blind mice, possibly paired with a treasure map, and you can lock up top 4 by turn 2 or 3 under optimal circumstances. And there's nothing even remotely resembling a downside here either. It's just simply the best hero. Last and almost, but not quite least, is Zelhua. Another bad initial hero selection and a great late game swap option. They did buff it, but it's still a hero with no impact on the game at all for the first 6 turns, unless you can gain some experience. It could move up a little bit, but it's not going to go very far. F tier, right in front of Morgan. Alright, that's it. That wraps up another hero tier list iteration. Thank you so much to anybody crazy enough to stay through the entire video. If you would, please do me a favor and use the link down below in the description to join the Discord. It's been a bunch of people that have hopped in there. Thank you to those of you that have. We started to have quite a bit of discussions around the game, so please feel free to hop in and join us. We'll also be using that Discord once custom lobbies are available to group up and compete against one another. Should be a lot of fun. Also remember to like, comment, and subscribe on this video in order to help me out. The only goal that I fall short of for the YouTube Partner Program already is subscribers. That's insane. Thank you all so much. If you haven't, though, please do hit that subscribe button. It'll help tremendously. Until next time, Brawlers, see you in my lobbies.